Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and I want to talk to you about some really cool information I came across. A video from a scientist who talks about how scientists have proven the solar flash, although that's not their intention, nor would they say such a thing. But they do talk about something that the sun has been doing that is impossible, and having to do with the sun emitting high-powered gamma rays that can only come from places like the black hole that we happen to have in our galactic center. Welcome back to the channel. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. Before we go deeper into this, if you're new to the channel, this channel is not just about you listening to me talk about interesting things. This channel is about me giving you specific tools, a specific path. I will give you the very specific, very simple, powerful tools which you can use, which will shift you in any imaginable way. You want to have a better life, you want to be more prosperous, you want to be more healthy, you want spiritual power, you want to be able to shift the energy frequency of the cells of your body, you want to open up your chakras, you want to stimulate your kundalini, you want to be able to have a path to give you specific, provable, repeatable methods to interact with higher dimensional beings. That's what I do on this channel. So you can see here, you can get my books at michaelwilliamdenny.com. People leave me questions on the chat. They leave me questions in the video comments that are so easily answerable if you just simply put the time in to read my books. Somebody asked me about Odin. I've got books written about Odin. I've got videos on here about Odin as well. So you can get my books, including Interdimensional Revolution. What we're going to talk about today is going to be extremely important, having to do with that. You'll have to read between the lines, but I think you're smart enough to do that. You can get Interdimensional Revolution at that website as well. And courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my services, including Vedic astrology readings, rune readings, and all of my certification courses and specials, etc., courses.thunderwizard.com. But the most valuable tools I can give you are the most powerful energy meditation practice in the history of Earth. I don't say that lightly. I've spent decades putting this thing together, and I came to the conclusion after searching high and low that there's nothing. I mean, I guarantee that you'll not find anybody teaching all of these energy practices into one discipline. You can go here to thunderwizard.com, click around for Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. I guarantee you, if you follow my directions to the letter consistently, I guarantee you, you will have a shift and you will have a life change. That is something I guarantee. And I recommend and challenge you to prove me wrong. What is this? A little bit of protein drink there. All right. So the scientist proves the solar flash, impossible but true. So I put a link in the description and the chat. Please don't ask me what the links are. You have the ability to look. You know, people again will take 20 seconds to write a comment about, can you give me the link to, and it'll be right here. Two most important things in life, you guys pay attention and put effort. I've got links. Just click on them. You'll find what you're looking for. You don't have to ask me about it. But the link I put in there, which has to do with scientists coming to the realization that something was happening with the sun that they didn't completely understand. And that is that the sun is emitting high-powered gamma radiation. And the reason why that's a big deal is because the kinds of gamma radiation that they're finding coming from the sun is impossible. The sun isn't capable of releasing that kind of energy. It doesn't have the mechanism within it. It can't do it. And so here you have an interesting situation where scientists are saying the facts are clear. The sun is emitting high-powered gamma radiation and we don't know how. And they come to the conclusion, without realizing it, that they're explaining the solar flash, which is happening. The conclusion that they come to is that somehow the sun is transmitting gamma radiation from the galactic center. Because this kind of gamma radiation can only come from places like black holes. And in fact, if you watch the video, the scientists there will make the conclusion that the most likely place for this particular radiation is in fact the black hole at the center of our galaxy. Now, why is that important? Now, as you know, I don't believe anything just because somebody says it. I had never heard of the solar flash, a year and a half ago. I never heard of it. If somebody said, what about the solar flash? I would say, the what? I'd never heard of it. I've heard about Ascension, but that's just a term that, been thrown around a long time. And I've heard 5D. I discounted all of that. If anybody talked about shifting to 5D, I would just destroy them and say they're full of, they're uneducated, full of crap, and are making things up or just repeating whatever new age nonsense. Well, I'm here to tell you that I have been given information that there is such a thing as a solar flash. And I got it from someplace I never thought possible. Again, a year and a half ago, I didn't even think that extraterrestrials existed. I didn't believe in such a thing. I didn't think it existed. Long story short, you can watch my video. Go look for it. It's called How I Became an Extraterrestrial. You can see my experience of how I first started interacting with higher dimensional beings from outside of our solar system, and all the things that I went through. And one of the things that happened is that they showed me that there was going to be something that was going to happen in the sky. It was going to be an event that would be seen in the sky, that would be seen worldwide, that would make people think that God was coming, depending on their religion. For Christians, they would think it was the second coming of Jesus, and then as soon as it happens, they would realize, no, this is something beyond that. They would have an awakening that would go beyond their religion. And that was the end of the vision that I was given. And later I went back to them and I said, so I don't understand. What is this event? I mean, is it going to be fleets of spaceships from other worlds? Because that's the only way I could imagine that would get people's attention and make them, shift to another understanding about themselves and the universe. And, I had this experience because these higher dimensional beings, as a result of me reaching out repeatedly, trying to make contact with them, as a result of that, I came to have a huge expansion of understanding about the soul and its relationship to the cosmos and what the cosmos really is, and multiple dimensions, and past life, reincarnation. All this stuff was given to me, just downloaded into me, physically and emotionally and spiritually, and communications, telepathic communications and energy exchanges with these beings. It went beyond anything I could have imagined. So I couldn't imagine anybody else, an average person. I couldn't imagine myself, let's say, 2 years ago. I couldn't have imagined myself 2 years ago being able to have the awareness I have now, unless something like that happened, unless there was fleets of spaceships that came and, and higher dimensional light beings came down. Outside of that, I couldn't imagine myself being able to even comprehend what they were telling me was going to happen. So I asked them, I said, what is this event going to be? Is it going to be spaceships, landing on Earth? And the response was no. It's going to be a series of solar waves of love. I was like, what? Solar waves of love that are going to hit the Earth, penetrate through the Earth, and as a result of that, the Earth and all of life on it is going to shift up to a higher dimensional frequency, what we would call 5D. And after that message, I thought to myself, this is just weird. This sounds like something a little child would make up. It sounds so new agey. I'm saying this to myself afterwards, and I came to the conclusion, I think I made that up. And I said so on one of my live streams, and somebody said, no, that's a real thing. It's called the solar flash. It's called the event. And people have been talking about it since, before 2012. And I went, what? And I looked it up, and sure enough, now, I had to fill in the blanks because all I was told was that there was going to be an event in the sky. It was going to shift everybody up. Their awareness was going to be shifted up. They were going to think it was God coming. And but I didn't know exactly what the mechanism of that was. The solar wave event, So I start looking into this, and I find out that way back before 2012, people, wherever they got the information, I don't know. So I can't talk about that. The only thing that matters to me is that it's just so coincidental that I'm hearing that from higher dimensional beings, and then I find out later that humans have been talking about this for years. And what has been taught is that there's an ascension event that's going to come. And it's going to come very soon. It's going to come after 2012. And what will happen is that there will be a solar flash event where the sun will release high gamma frequency radiation, which will hit the earth, and it will flip on all kinds of switches. It'll shift us up. It'll turn on dormant DNA strands, and it will be energy that will be coming from the galactic center. And then nobody explains how. Somehow this energy from the galactic center will make its way through the sun, and the sun will be the projector of this high gamma frequency radiation from the galactic center. So, nobody tried to explain it, because at that point, when you start talking about that, it's like, well, anything can happen. Once you start accepting the Mandela effect and you start accepting all kinds of other things, once you've interacted with higher dimensional beings and gone out of space and time and have, in my case, just in one interaction, an extremely powerful higher dimensional entity told me something that simultaneously I was experiencing that being talking to me, because I remember an experience I had when I was 7. I remember an experience I had when I was 18, and then the experience I was having just last year when I was, 58. And I was seeing that communication was one communication from one being outside of space-time, and he was directing it to 3 points in my life. And the whole thing, all of it made sense all of a sudden, and of course, the smoke was coming out of my ears. Once you have an experience like that, somebody says, well, somehow higher vibrational gamma energy is going to be shot out of the sun, which is going to make people into demigods. At that point, it's like, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of things about this that don't make sense. So, I'm not going to pick that apart. But now we have proof. We have proof from scientists who don't know anything about the solar flash, who have no interest. I'm sure if I were to talk to this scientist and say, you're explaining the solar flash, he would go, no, I'm not. I'm talking about science. I'm not talking about any of that new age nonsense. But he is telling us very clearly that the sun is already doing this. The sun is already a window. It is sending out energy from what could very well be, and he even says most likely coming from our galactic center. Now, to be fair, it could be coming from anything like any black hole or any quasar or anything that gives up that kind of gamma radiation. But he was very clear that scientists had come to the conclusion that it's most likely coming from our galactic center. So here you have it. You have the proof now. You don't have to be wondering about it. Science is coming to this conclusion. I find that extremely interesting. I've shared this before, I'll share it again, but there's another scientific discovery that I find very interesting, which relates to this. One of the things that I have experienced, and one of the things I was told, was that I personally, as a result of this repeated telepathic and energetic communication with higher dimensional beings, and this was they were doing this on purpose as well, is that my DNA has changed. Now, before you get all bent out of shape about that, that's not a big deal, because we know from science, again, science, my friend science, when it wants to, can come to my aid. We know from scientific studies that if you have two twins who have the exact same DNA structure, their mentality, their emotional state, their mentality, the assumptions, the beliefs that they have, and the actions that they take actually change their DNA. So your life will change your DNA. We know that radiation does that, negative radiation does that. But then there's positive radiation as well. And so we know that that radiation can do that, and we know that solar radiation can do that. So don't get bent out of shape when I tell you that light beings were consciously changing my DNA. For what reasons, I don't know, other than, I imagine me, helping me shift up a little early. That's my feeling. They were kind of helping me shift up a little early. Which is why, by the way, I recommend everybody subscribe to the 90-day challenge and do the interdimensional meditation. If you want to, you can go on to the my YouTube channel. Everybody should do this. Thunder Wizard, DOTCOM, the YouTube channel page. Those of you who take the 30 seconds to ask me where I can find a link to this or that, you could, if you spent 3 seconds just going to my YouTube channel page and going to the playlists, you could find them. In the playlist, you will find free guided interdimensional meditations. My favorite one is the meditation to Jupiter. Jupiterian beings are extremely powerful. But as I was saying, so, our DNA changing is something we know that happens. And science, again, has come to the conclusion that this is exactly what happened when the Neanderthals went extinct. We know from the geological record that at some point Neanderthals just disappeared off the face of the planet. And they've been trying to figure that out, what that is. Did humans get rid of them? Did they run into an ecological dead end? Were they unable to shift with the change of seasons and all that? But the climactic changes. But the truth is that Neanderthals were on Earth 4 times longer than humans have been on the Earth. Modern humans have been on the Earth about 100,000 years. Neanderthals were extremely successful, and they were on the Earth for over 400,000 years before they went extinct. So the idea that somehow they just couldn't function doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But at the exact moment in history where they mysteriously disappeared, and humans then jumped up and became the only hominid species on the planet, is that the Earth was going through the exact same conditions it is experiencing right now. So we have 2 things happening. We have what's called a solar maximum, which is when the electromagnetic field of the sun, the poles are shifting. And that is creating, and every time it happens, it creates solar storms which hit the Earth. Solar flares, coronal mass ejections, solar plasma hits, stronger than normal, hits the Earth. Now, when the Earth has a very strong electromagnetic field, it is able to deflect the majority of that. So we have solar maximums happening all the time, but when you've got a strong electromagnetic field, not a whole lot happens to the Earth. But we have something else going on, which is called an incursion event, which is the electromagnetic field of the Earth is unstable, and some people think that the poles are shifting. It doesn't have to, but the electromagnetic poles are definitely, moving around, and it's creating these holes in the electromagnetic field. Now, when you have that combined with a larger than normal solar maximum, which is what we have now, the solar maximum, the storms and the flares that are coming off the sun have already far exceeded any of the predictions of NASA. NASA predicted, the solar maximum was going to do this much amount of solar radiation and the whole thing. And we've already gone far beyond what they thought the entire solar maximum would be. So we're off the charts in terms of the amount of solar radiation that is hitting the Earth and the plasma and all of that. You've seen that over the past few months. There have been, just a couple of days ago, we had, northern lights going down normally than, farther, than they normally do. So this is exactly what happened when the Neanderthals went extinct, and the reason is, according to science, because the solar radiation affected the DNA of the Neanderthals, and this is how we have. They come to the same conclusion that this is when you have huge evolutionary shifts. When the solar radiation is able to penetrate and change and turn on and turn off and mutate the DNA within plants and animals, that's when you have major evolutionary shifts. That's exactly what's happening right now. And it turns out that's what the New Agers have been saying, the people talking about solar flash, that's what the ETs are telling me, that the solar radiation is changing people's DNA, but on top of that, there's the whole spiritual aspect. So all of this is happening right now. And I find it very encouraging and interesting and coincidental that science is now saying what the spiritual people have been saying for 20 years, that there's going to be a shift, an evolutionary shift, not just physical, but spiritual, mental, psychological. And it's going to completely awaken human beings to a whole other level of awareness where everything is going to change far beyond what we could comprehend. So many people come back from near-death experiences, and when they talk about the future, they say, it's going to be so different, I can't even explain it, how different things are. Everything's going to shift. Everything's going to change. And here we have scientists, seeing this in the past, and they're seeing it now without realizing it. That there is an energy coming from the center of our galaxy through the sun somehow hitting Earth. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the center of our galaxy is in Sagittarius. When you look at it, from our perspective, it's in the astrological sign of Sagittarius. And it represents the emptiness. It represents the gateway to true spirituality. That's what Sagittarius is. It's lorded over by the planet Jupiter, which is the priest. So here again, we've got another correlation that highly spiritual energy is coming through the sun and affecting us. Now, we have all kinds of other interesting things that I put a bunch of links in here, as you can see, but I just want to take some time because I think this is an absolutely historical event. The fires in Maui. And first off, I want to send, my heartfelt, healing thoughts to those people and to that very sacred place. And it's very significant, this event. And the reason why it's significant to me personally, because actually Maui, as I understand it, is the birthplace of surfing. And surfing is really what I live for. It's the only thing that really matters to me. If I'm really honest, it's the only thing that keeps me here. If it weren't for surfing, I would probably just, put on a backpack and walk out into the forest and never come back again. So it's really the only thing. I do this work so that I can have enough money to have my beach house and surf. That's really the only reason I'm here. So brings up a lot of emotions for me, the birthplace of that, the town of Lahaina that was swept away and completely taken off the map. The town of Lahaina was actually the capital of the Hawaiian Islands, and the royalty would live there, and one of the things they would do, the royalty, is they would surf. In fact, it was kind of a royal, the sport of royalty, and that's where they did it. We think of the North Shore of Oahu as being it, which it is these days, but historically it was Lahaina. That's where people surfed. And what's interesting about that is the timing of it. It's you couldn't have planned. You couldn't have planned it better. Because you have this combination. Why don't I just go through? I've got a list here. I can talk through it. So you have this perfect condition where you have late summer conditions. Now, I've been there. I've been to Maui, and I know that it gets, there's actually some desert, around Maui, because they get a lot of hot, dry air and a lot of wind, and so it's not impossible for, it's not impossible for fires to happen. I've never heard of anything like this happening anywhere on the Hawaiian Islands ever in history, but it is possible. We've known that. But you've got this late, it's late in the summer, it's August, it's warm, and then out of nowhere you have this really strange scenario of, all of a sudden these hurricanes start showing up, which brings a bunch of really high wind that is going over the mountain. And the winds are going in a perfect direction, like the perfect direction. Now, as I understand it, the Lahaina fire started, if somebody were to plan this out, which of course I'm not saying is what happened, but if somebody wanted to, this is how you would do it. They started a fire up the mountainside at just above the edge of town, and the fire started there. And the wind was blowing perfectly in the perfect direction. It went downhill, and it's only got one place to go, which is to go to the historic town of Lahaina. And there's only one place for the fire to go. Now, what's interesting is that fire did start up there by the elementary school, I believe it was, and the local fire people got it under control. The fire department got it under control, and they said everything's good. We got it under control. And then all of a sudden it started up again, which isn't impossible, but again, it's a perfect storm, as if, you couldn't plan it better. And then there were no warnings. Now, there were these warning sirens. I don't know what they're there for, but they have these warning sirens that didn't go off, which is very, very inconvenient. And it turns out that there was no evacuations. Nobody, somebody knew that this fire could happen and didn't evacuate anybody. And as it turns out, also, there was very little, if not no water in the hydrants, so they didn't have anything to fight the fire with. Anyway, it was just, such a sad turn of events where you have this perfect storm of all this bad luck, coincidentally happening. Anyway, Maui itself is a really interesting island. There's a lot of really cool stuff there. As I said, it was the capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom. It's the Hawaiian spiritual, center and capital of the traditional Hawaiian Kingdom. And then there's that really great mountain, Haleakala, which is, it's got a really cool. If you've ever been there, it's just amazing. And as it happens, there's an Air Force base at the top of the mountain, which I'm not sure, but I think it's got. I think if you had some binoculars, you might even be able to see Lahaina. I'm not sure if you could see around the mountain, but I think you could probably see from right there. It's a very it's a very interesting Air Force base. There's only 2 like it in the world, at least in the U.S. There's one in New Mexico, and there's the other one is on top of Mount Haleakala, which is it's the U.S. Air Force Directed Energy Lab, and it's really interesting. I mean, I put a link here. You should go look at some of the stuff that they do. But apparently it gives our Air Force and our military, there are these defense things that we can use to protect our country in ways I hadn't even thought of. So stuff out of Star Wars. And anyway, when you look at the link, you'll see how interesting it is because, the way that fire started, as I said, was just so, inconveniently all these things came together as if, listen, if you wanted to plan it out, that would be the perfect way to plan out all that stuff, which of course isn't what happened. It was a purely natural event. But what's interesting is people don't know how the fire started. So why do I bring that up? Well, because I've been told that there's going to be major events. What my ET friends told me is that just a few weeks ago they said, keep your eyes open, don't get scared. There's going to be some major events going on in the world that are going to be frightening, and people could come to all kinds of conclusions, which of course we can't do here on YouTube, nor would I even dream of making such accusations. But take a look at those links. Speaking of directed energy, there's an interesting phenomenon. I don't know if you saw this, but just like 1 or 2 days after the Maui Fires, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. And you go look for it on YouTube. I've got a link down here. There is a house in Pennsylvania that spontaneously exploded. Now, I've seen, house explosions before, but I've never seen anything like this. I've seen, sides of houses get blown out because, there's a gas leak or something like that. But, so it's not uncommon for something like that to happen. But whatever happened at this house, which, by the way, this house in Pennsylvania, it was determined it was not because of the gas leak. So that's good. We know that it wasn't any fault of the people, the gas company people. But there's a film. Very conveniently, somebody's doorbell camera was focused on this house, and you see this house explode out of nowhere. And the enormity of the blast is that not only the entire house, and it's a big house, it's like a big 2-story house, it completely explodes. And it takes out and completely flattens the 2 big houses on each side of it. Not to mention, of course, massive destruction on the whole block. But you should take a look at that. But I mean, that would be... Anyway, I mean, it just made me thought about, the interesting combination of that as I was thinking about the directed energy lab. Anyway, but it's almost like that's what you would expect from some kind of sci-fi movie. If some UFO were flying over and they wanted to use some kind of laser beam to take out a house, start a natural disaster. I mean, that's what it looked like. But what was interesting about that is that I was really I was so intrigued by that video of that house exploding out of nowhere. And of course, there was tragic loss of life. I think like 5 people died. It was really horrible. But what I found interesting is that when I started searching for that on YouTube, all of these other house explosions that aren't coming up on the mainstream news. Now, this house explosion came up on mainstream national news, as of course the fires and the unprecedented. There has never been, according to the news, this is the worst fire disaster in United States history. And such a tiny, the other sad part about it is that, Maui is kind of the center for Hawaiian tourism. So, that's going to be a huge dent in the U.S. economy. I mean, it has a huge dent in United States, security around the world. Nobody's going to want to go to Hawaii now knowing this kind of stuff could happen. I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, if you wanted to strike terror and frighten people, the one way you would do it is you would go and destroy, the center of something as ubiquitous as the Hawaiian Islands, or, not only that, but tourism to the, I mean, if you really wanted to just, not only that, if you wanted to create, a racial divide, that would be the perfect way to do it. It'd create all kinds of anti-colonialism sentiment, a lot of anti-racial sentiment. It could really work if somebody wanted to start some problems. That would be one of the best ways to do it. But again, if you wanted to frighten the hell out of people, another one would be, to manufacture some of this stuff we've been talking about. But as I said, one of the most interesting things is that that house explosion in Pennsylvania, there's within the past couple of weeks, not to mention I saw it going back months and years, just in the past few weeks, there have been houses spontaneously exploding all over the country. And you're not seeing it on the news, but when I looked at it, it was like, wow, within a week, 2-week period, houses are exploding for no reason. Seemingly. I mean, there's got to be an explanation. Of course there's an explanation. And of course the most likely explanation is going to be, some kind of gas leak or something like that. But, in case of, in terms of the, the one thing that this explosion has with the house explosion has with the Lahaina fires is that they still don't know how the Lahaina fires started. And according to mainstream media, it's going to take months or years before they figure out how the fire started, which is interesting because usually you can figure out pretty quickly how a fire started. So I don't know, there must be something about that event that makes it difficult. And, when you look at the damage, I mean, it looks like somebody dropped a bomb on it. It looks like somebody shot a laser at it. You've got, complete buildings gone, and you've got cars that are melted, like the engine blocks are melted from the inside out. I mean, like there was so much heat that the inside of the car melted, from inside out. That you've got to have a lot of heat for that to happen. Anyway, just some interesting thoughts, but definitely what is happening is, as I said, my ET friends have told me, watch out because there's going to be major, major stuff going on in the world. So I don't know, but my prediction, this isn't a psychic prediction of any kind, I think that these kinds of events, natural disasters, maybe wars across the world, and economics, all kinds of, I think this is the beginning of something like that. And unfortunately, this plays right into the hand of, the doomsday sayers that say there's some elite cabal doing this. Now, I'm not saying that, but it's just, unfortunately people conflate and put this stuff together, but it's just, I'm pretty sure, in fact, there is, just to let you know, I don't have a link for it, but just to let you know, I did do some fact checking because, I'm not going to repeat the conspiracy theorists, what they say, what started the Lahaina fire. I'm not going to repeat that because, there's no proof for any of that, and I don't want to spread that kind of misinformation. But I went and what came up within hours, thankfully, there wasn't any, we have to say, unfortunately, there wasn't enough people to take care of the disaster in Lahaina as it was happening. There wasn't anybody to stop it. There wasn't anybody to show up. But within hours, there was a fact-checking article that came out on Yahoo within hours, thankfully debunking one of these crazy theories on, misinformation theories on how the fire started. And I was so grateful, and I wanted to just really appreciate the person behind it. And so I looked to see who wrote it, and it turns out it was a writer, a guy like me. I thought maybe it was going to be a scientist or somebody who is an expert in firefighting or natural disasters. But, you know, I mean, those people have other jobs to do. But thankfully, there's a guy who's a writer. He's a guy, I think he's written for Hollywood, he's written for TV, and of course, he's written some books. And, you know, we writers have to make a living, so he writes for the Snopes.com, you know, they're fact checkers. So thankfully, he fact checked this. I'm sure he got his information from I'm sure he did his due diligence within the first few hours after to be able to debunk that misinformation. But he didn't provide any links as to how he came to his scientific conclusions. But, you know, that's the great thing about writers. Writers are so smart, they can just come up with stuff off the top of their head, especially, you know, if they're given an assignment, you know. If he's given an assignment to debunk some misinformation, thankfully he doesn't have to go, you know, and talk to an expert. He's smart enough, you know, I'm smart enough. I can figure this stuff. I can come up with stuff off the top of my head, which is most likely accurate every time. So I was really grateful to see that they were on, that the fact checkers, while the fire was still going on, that the fact checkers were there to get rid of any misinformation. But unfortunately, there wasn't, you know, anybody there to, you know, to turn on the warning sirens, or to make sure that there was enough water, or to make sure that people were getting evacuated. Unfortunately, they didn't have those resources, but they did have fact checker resources, and for that, I can, you know, it just makes me feel better knowing that it's misinformation. Anyway, really interesting times, but again, I go off topic. The point of this video, again, is to talk about the fact that scientists have come to the conclusion, independent of all of us crazy spiritual people, that the solar flash, as has been described, is impossible but true. That the sun is emitting high-powered gamma rays coming from most likely the black hole at the center of our galaxy. So, that's kind of it for me. I think we can leave it there. Listen, if you're interested in experiencing this, again, I would never have believed in any sort of solar flash anything had I not personally experienced the things surrounding it. Everything that has been told to me about surrounding this event by my extraterrestrial friends so far has come true. And I'll tell you what they told me now. So, you know, you can go look it up, solar flash event, etc., etc., but this was back in late 2022, and they had explained this to me, and I had come to the understanding of what the solar flash meant. I came to the conclusion it was called, that should be called the solar wave event, because it's waves of solar radiation that increase. And what I was told, that with every one of these waves of gamma radiation that hits the Earth, with every single one of these waves that hits the Earth, that you're going to see two things. You're going to see an increase in the awareness of the human race, spiritually. And I have definitely seen that. Every time, this is why I watch, you know, to see when the solar flares are going to hit the Earth, you know, that just after each one of these waves hits, you will see over the coming days and weeks that there will be some kind of like sort of ripple effect, and there will be a lot of awakening. You'll see a lot of exposing of lies and corruption on all kinds of, you know, on high levels. A lot of fat cats being exposed for who they are. But more importantly, people are waking up like popcorn. People are waking up to their own victim mentality, to their own misunderstandings. People are becoming more open to spiritual awakening, to meditation, to spiritual practices, and it's happening like popcorn. But it happens every time there's one of these waves. There's a seemingly interesting coincidental shift in awareness and a revelation of what is really going on. Just to, you know, I mean, now, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, the idea of mainstream media talking about the existence of extraterrestrials was unheard of. I mean, you'd get laughed out of anywhere if somebody said, that on the, the MSNBC or ABC news, nationwide news, that they're going to be talking about the existence of extraterrestrials. That would have been unheard of. And now, you can't shut them up. Mainstream media won't stop talking about ETs existing, and are they going to come and invade, and are they a threat, all that stuff. So just that, the world has already shifted. And what I was told by my ET friends on December 21st or 22nd, I think, I can't remember which. I mean, I made a video about it on 2022. They woke me up. Actually, the night before, I went and talked to them, and they took me to this. Of course, this was happening in a meditative state. Physically, I didn't go anywhere, but my energy body was guided to this. I don't know if it was a planet. I think it was a planet somewhere, and it was this giant room filled with a bunch of like balls of light. And I was told these are other people like me. And these are people's energy bodies, and it was it was in this big hall, and there was some people out there talking to us, and they were saying, the time has come, it's happened, get ready, this is the beginning, this is the first of the awakening event, it's starting officially now. And I remember having that meditation. I went, wow, that's really, I didn't take it all that seriously, I didn't disregard it. That's what I do with my meditations. And I went to bed, and around 7:30 in the morning, I was woken up, and I was woken up to a vision of this energy coming through the sky, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I certainly felt it. My body was like, I had this huge amount of energy go through my blissful energy go through my whole body, and then I went outside, and everything looked normal. But I wasn't the only one. A bunch of other people said on that exact same moment they got hit with this huge amount of energy, and I was told that was the beginning. And then in March, we had some huge solar events, some coronal mass ejections with a lot of solar plasma that hit the Earth, and we had auroras go, way down, all the way down into almost Mexico. I think it was unbelievable how far south it went. And they said, this is it. The event has now begun. There is no turning back. And they were telling me, watch, the entire world is going to change. Just sit back and watch. It's going to take a little time, but once the changes start coming, they're going to snowball. So my prediction is that these kinds of events, both disasters as well as awakenings, as well as the revelations of what the heck's going on, people talking about UFOs, people sighting of aliens, which we can talk about, but people like me who are reaching out and having connections, personal interactions and communications with higher dimensional beings. And I'm being told, there's a lot of stuff I'm not saying because I don't know how helpful it is, but I will say this. I would recommend that everybody make their main priority in life shifting the energy of their body to a higher frequency, and to work through all of your emotional, unresolved psychological issues, all of your pain, all of your trauma. I would also recommend, take this for what it's worth, but if I had kids, which I don't, and if I did have kids, they might be, around college age, young adults, I would say to them, listen, don't worry about career. Don't waste your energy trying to save money and make it, the only thing you should be focusing on right now is your spiritual development and your energetic frequency. That's the only thing you should be worried about. That's the only thing you should be focused on, because all of that stuff is going to go away. It is very likely that banks are going to go away. Money is going to go away. Already we're seeing there's really no such thing as countries anymore. There's just one big giant worldwide thing going on. We've got all these wars, but if this shift happens the way that I think it's going to happen, the world as you know it isn't going to exist, which means the way that we, try to be successful in life is going to change. So the way to be successful in this coming reality is not to have money, not to have bank accounts and savings accounts and IRAs, and to own property. With the property crisis that's going on, think of all the people in Lahaina that owned property. Worthless. And if you think that insurance is going to cover that kind of loss, we've already seen that happen in other parts. I know in California, I think I don't know if it was after the fires or something like that, but because of that, the insurance companies are defaulting, they're not paying up, and they're refusing to take new customers because they don't want to pay out. They're looking for reasons to pay out. So the insurance companies aren't going to be able to handle this kind of tragedy. So if you think that your investment in some house and something like that happens to your house, you think you're going to get that money back. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but there's a lot of people out there that are saying it's not happening. So I don't recommend investing in that kind of stuff. I recommend investing in yourself. Because if what some people are saying is true, that this high vibrational gamma radiation is going to create a prism effect where as the energy hits the earth is going to split off into two different frequencies. And depending on your mindset will determine which frequency of earth you live on. And I don't know what that's going to be like. It might be sort of like a rapture event where all of a sudden people will, out of their bodies and land somewhere else. Or they'll just wake up one day and things will be different and some people will be gone. And, well, where did that house go? What about that giant building is gone that was across the street? And, all of that stuff is going to go away. I don't know. That's my prediction. So I predict that you focus on that. If you need some guidance, you can go to the playlists. And you can take any of the meditation practices, the energy practices, the guided interdimensional meditation. If you want help, specific guidance, you have the highest, most powerful energy practice I've ever seen on planet Earth. In the history of planet Earth, and I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing esoteric spiritual practices my entire adult life. I have sought out from all over the world, including Africa, Asia, Europe. I have sought out the most powerful practices, transformational energy and meditation practices, and I have synthesized them into the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. If you subscribe to that, you'll just press play and just do what I do. Do the very simple exercises as I do them, and follow the directions. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. You've got nothing to lose. It may be, I'm not saying I'm the only game in town, because I'm certainly not. There isn't one way to do this. But, it may be the thing that allows you to shift to the higher earth as opposed to the lower earth. And again, I make no guarantees, but anybody who wants it can have it. But I'm just providing what I've been doing. If you want what I have, you got to do what I do. So go to thunderwizard.com, scroll around, and when you get there, after you subscribe, you're going to see this picture. Give me a second. Let me find it. When you'll see this picture, that's after you have subscribed, and you'll see there, I'm sorry, my other thing's in the way, but you'll see those boxes. See where it says Lightning Qigong, 90-day. All you have to do is click on that box, and all of the videos for the Lightning Qigong will come up. I've made it easier. You don't even have to go looking for it. And again, just follow the instructions. Okay, so I think that's it. Please don't be lazy and look at all of the links that I've given you. I've given you no shortage of links to look at. Very interesting things. Interesting stuff about the United States Air Force Base on Maui. Very interesting and coincidental that that's there. And you can look at the house explosions and the questions over why all of a sudden this really weird scenario happens where all of these safety measures in Lahaina somehow didn't work. What was that all about? And let's see what else. And you can learn about what I talked about, scientists telling you verbatim that gamma radiation, that the sun is releasing gamma radiation from the galactic center. I've got a link for that. Learn the truth about the secret government UFO program, what the real secret government UFO program, I've got a link to that. And I've got a link here which maybe, I don't know about this, but I find it very interesting. Some understandings about the new 5D Earth that will come as a result of this solar wave event that many people, including myself, say that we are going through. So that's it. I'm not taking any more questions. Again, the only questions I would ever take are from people who are subscribed to the Warrior 90-Day Challenge, and I don't see any of that. Again, people ask the questions people ask, it's annoying. I wish you guys would ask questions about what I talk about and what I teach. I can look at it. People are wanting me to talk about other stuff. But that's why I don't take questions. There's an honest feeling. Zaralath says, I'm excited and proud that I am showing many people my version of your Qigong. People are liking it and doing it. Very good. And yeah, that's the whole idea, to get this information out. All right, so that's it for me. Nothing else, guys. I wish you guys all the best. And again, my books, Interdimensional Revolution, you can get at michaelwilliamdenny.com. The audiobook version, the digital version, and the print version. Also, Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth is another one of my books. And probably the most important book is called The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. If you get that book, and if you either listen to the audio over and over again, or if you have the written version and you read it daily, and you do what I suggest, I guarantee you'll shift. Because what I teach in that book, the Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, is exactly how people are going to live in 5D. So when you listen to that, if you're not following that, then you know what you need to do to shift to 5D. Now, if you have difficulty of finding out what your soul desire is, which what we talk about after reading the book, then you can go here to thunderwizard.com, and if you scroll to the bottom, you can get a session with me. I always help people figure out what their core soul destiny is. And if you want, you can just get the video teaching of it. And if you want to create your own business as a consultant, a career consultant, which again, I think in 5D, that's, the world isn't going to be filled with doctors and lawyers and politicians and scientists. The world is going to be filled with spiritual practitioners. And so everything is going to shift on its head. And in 5D, what's going to be most needed is spiritual teachers and healers. So that is one way you can get started on that process, helping people learn how to do that. All right, that's it. I got nothing else. If you're new to the channel, next time you come on here and before you leave a comment or leave a question, which I probably won't answer, I recommend that you read my books first. I recommend that you watch my videos. I recommend that you subscribe so you know what it is I'm talking about. Coming onto my channel because you're just floating around, you got nothing better to do, and you want to ask me about somebody else's channel, I'm not going to respond to those anymore. All right, that's it. I love you guys. I wish you all the best. And keep your eyes peeled, because what's happening in Lahaina, what's happening with houses exploding out of nowhere, this is just the beginning. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. I love you all. See you next time.